Hello, it's March 2022, and lately I've been noticing a lot of people talking about, well, actually not, let me just back up for a sec here. Over the years, the past 2 years, people have been talking about what's in this alleged cure that's going into their bodies, and they're talking about nanotechnology and things of that nature. And by no means am I an expert on any of this kind of stuff. But over the years, I have one of the topics that I would research, and I came across a gentleman by the name of James Tour. And he's one of the pioneers of this nanotechnology. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, oh yes, I use the word believe, he created the first, what he called the nanotech car. And it's just basically some super microscopic little thing that moves around. Very simple design, I guess, within any host, like a body, human body or whatever. And it's very interesting. I remember years ago when I came across him and listening to him talk and everything else. It was just one of those things that you kind of put on the shelf of information, because it really didn't have a use for it. Kind of reminds me of Edward Griffin's interview with Norman Dodd, and he did that interview, I think, like a decade or two before he actually released it, because again, it was one of those super informative interviews about truth and what Norman Dodd and his team uncovered with, specifically with tax-exempt foundations, which actually caused one of his team members, I think he had a team of 5 if I'm not mistaken, and one of them was a lawyer who literally went insane, his words, with what they uncovered. But Edward Griffin sat on that interview until after the event in 2001, and then things started to make sense to him and he released it. So with going back to James Tour, is one of those things that's like very interesting, read about him, his research, and tried to understand. Like, he really gets super technical when it comes to these kind of things. And so it's one of those things that kind of shelved of information. And it was really interesting when he talked about graphene and everything else and how all this stuff works. And it wasn't until the past few years when people started talking about certain things being put into their body, unknowingly to those who accept it. And all of a sudden, the light bulb went off, and I'm like, aha, James Tour. So I kind of revisited that a little bit the past few years, and I'm like, could be something here. And he did do some videos during the past 2 years debunking any claims of anything being in this alleged cure and everything else, but can't help but wonder his bias, right? So anyway, and he's done things for the military and all sorts of stuff, but anyway. So people have been talking about this kind of thing, and I just thought I'd mention, James Tour comes to mind. See what he has to say, especially in things prior to current worldwide events with what was being imposed and everything else. And then you can start to really see and understand. I'll just leave that up to you to figure out. And then there's a lot of people talking about, I did a few videos a couple of years ago, everyone was talking about this 5G thing and everything else. And again, there were people in that profession, saying, no, there's nothing, but who knows, right? And then lately, for some strange reason, I've been seeing people talking about a resonating frequency of 423, or 432, so that was 432, and saying that that's the healing frequency. And I remember a long time ago, 10, 20 years ago, I can't remember when, came across the work of Christopher Dunn, and he wrote a book called The Giza Power Plant, and talking about 440 being the natural harmonic frequency of the world, of the earth and stuff, and how people would be going, well, let me just stop here for a sec. Pyramids were power plants generating some form of power, electricity or something, and whatever. And what is known as the King's Chamber, they found that it resonates at 440. And since this was discovered, people would go in there and meditate and whatever, and create that 440 frequency to heal and all this other stuff. And he had nothing, that wasn't his focus about the healing part. But it's interesting how all of a sudden now 432 is allegedly the healing frequency, when anything 20 years ago it was 440. A lot of people are trying to say, well, there's a lot of information. Well, yeah, there's also a lot of biased information, but just throwing that out for what it's worth. What does James Tour and Christopher Dunn's work have to do with each other? Well, in this 432 frequency, a lot of people are talking about whatever has been accepted, people complying with whatever was introduced into the body, frequencies triggering them. Very possible. I'm not saying it's not. Again, by no means am I an expert. But when you combined the work of James Tour with the work of Christopher Dunn, and then all of a sudden people are saying, well, it's actually 432, that's the healing frequency, and people are buying into it. Well, just imagine if any other frequency other than 440, which is nature, the earth, everything, people are going along with that, and that's actually the trap. And say this nanotech is triggered by it. Well, these people are voluntarily harming themselves, whether they have that substance in them or not. They could be harming themselves. So I just want to finish up by saying, to get to the truths, the facts of something, I've said this before, you have to look at related, unrelated, direct, indirect, independent evidence. I'm going to repeat that. Direct, indirect, related, unrelated, independent evidence. And that's how you get to the truth of something, factually. Because when you can look at information, for example, Christopher Dunn's work with the Giza power plants and talking about 440, initially and pretty much throughout, although he does even mention about the healing properties or whatever of 440, his work had nothing to do with people who, for example, want to focus on healing frequencies and stuff. So we have indirect and unrelated information that seems to contradict. As for James Tour, that would be an example of direct and related information prior to any biases that may be being presented today. And this is how you start to try to filter things out. It takes a lot of work, it takes a lot of time, especially now in today's world, especially online, with everything being, as a descriptive, regulated. It's not easy, but it's very possible. You just need dedication. Anyway, just sharing this for what it's worth. Thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, comment, and share.
This means Listen to this and write it down if you can't remember it. You're never going to outgrow warfare. You simply must learn to fight. I hear people saying to me, oh, when is it going to get easier? When you die.